If you've ever dived into the world of peptides online, you know it can feel like the Wild West, right? There's so much advice flying around, and a lot of it conflicts. But there's one thing you see everywhere: people talking about mixing different peptides in the same syringe. So today, we're going to cut through all that noise and figure out if this is actually a smart shortcut or a really costly mistake. You know this phrase. You've seen it 1,000 times in forums, in comment sections. It's the classic refrain. But let's be real, trust me, bro might just be the most dangerous 3 words in all of biohacking. So let's put that expert advice under the microscope, shall we? Because here's the thing. While it seems super convenient, this whole bro science approach could be totally sabotaging your results before that needle even gets close to your skin. So let's actually dive into the chemistry and the biology and see what's really going on in that syringe. First up, let's talk about the trust me, bro problem itself. We're going to break down exactly why this piece of advice, which seems so harmless, is actually a trap that can make your expensive peptides totally useless, or even worse, cause some nasty side effects. All right, let's just get right to the point. Here's the bottom line. About 95% of the time, mixing peptides is just lazy. It's a sign of an ineffective protocol. I know that sounds harsh, but it's not about being an elitist. It's about respecting your own biology and actually getting the results that you're paying good money for. So let's get into our next section, chemistry in a syringe. The problem literally starts the second that 2 different compounds meet inside that tiny plastic tube. We're about to look at all the unseen reactions that are happening right under your nose. This is so important to understand. A syringe is not a Vitamix. You're not just whipping up a little peptide smoothie. The moment you pull multiple compounds into that syringe, you're creating a brand new, uncontrolled chemical environment. You're essentially playing a game of molecular Jenga, and you have no way of seeing when the whole tower is about to fall over. And look, not all peptides are built the same, not even close. Take these 2 popular ones. You've got BPC-157, which is this compact, sturdy little chain of 15 amino acids. It's like a little brick. And then you have TB500, which is this much larger, more delicate structure with 43 amino acids. It's more like a fragile piece of origami. They have completely different shapes, sizes, and stabilities. So what happens when you throw these totally different structures together? Well, you're walking into a chemical minefield. Every single peptide has a specific pH level where it's stable and happy. When you force them together, you create this compromised environment where neither of them is happy. This can cause them to break down faster, to oxidize, or to just clump together into useless little blobs. You ever seen a vial get cloudy after you've reconstituted it? That has a name. It's called precipitation. And it's not just some minor mixing issue. It is visual, undeniable proof that your peptides are denaturing. They're literally falling apart. You're watching your money turn into a worthless aggregated clump. And here's the kicker. Even if the liquid stays perfectly clear, that molecular damage might already be done. Okay, so let's move on. Let's imagine for a second that some of your peptides actually survive the chemistry experiment in the syringe. Well, guess what? The problems are just getting started. Now we have to look at what happens inside your body. Let's call this section your body's symphony. This is honestly the perfect way to think about our biology. Your body's systems, especially your endocrine system, they don't respond to brute force. They operate on incredibly precise, timed signals. It's a delicate symphony. Injecting a mixed cocktail is like taking a giant air horn and blasting it right in the middle of a beautiful violin solo. It's just chaos. Want a perfect example of these conflicting signals? Here you go. On one hand, you have something like Semaglutide. It's a GLP-1, and it basically puts the brakes on your digestive system. On the other hand, you have Tesofensine, which is a powerful stimulant that absolutely hammers the gas pedal on your nervous system. So what do you think happens when you hit the brake and the gas at the exact same time? Yeah, the result is total chaos. You're telling your body to rest and digest and fight or flight at the exact same moment. That doesn't create synergy, it creates systemic confusion. Your receptors get completely overwhelmed. They can become desensitized, meaning they stop listening, and you're way more likely to get a bunch of side effects you didn't sign up for. All right, so all this begs the question, is it ever okay to mix? The answer is yes, but, and it's a big but, only in very specific cases. So let's get practical. Let's break down the green list and the red list. So the green list, the stuff that's sometimes okay to mix, is pretty short, and it follows one simple rule. You can mix peptides that are in the same class. Think of it this way. GHRH analogs, like CJC and tesamorelin, they're basically telling the same story to the same receptors. Same thing with the GHRPs. They're all speaking the same language, maybe just with a slightly different accent.
Now, the red list, well, this one's a lot longer. The big takeaway here is you should never mix peptides from different functional classes. Mixing a healing peptide like BPC with a growth hormone peptide like ipamorelin, you're mixing two completely different movie scripts. You're combining local signals with systemic signals. They have different pH needs. The result is just noise.
And then there's this one, a special rule, all on its own. GHK-copper. Never, ever mix it with anything else. Period. End of story. Why? Because those copper ions are incredibly reactive. They act like little catalysts that will actively seek out and destroy almost any other peptide you put them with. You're literally paying to have one peptide destroy another. So if mixing is mostly a bad idea, what's the answer? Well, the solution is to stop thinking like a chemist, just randomly mixing things in a beaker, and start thinking like a conductor leading an orchestra. It is all about the timing. This, right here, is the biggest takeaway of this whole thing. Real synergy, the kind of synergy that gets you incredible results, doesn't come from a cocktail in a syringe. It comes from intelligent, timed, sequential administration. It's about giving each compound the time and space it needs to do its job, creating a beautiful cascade of effects that works with your body's natural rhythms, not against them. Here's a perfect example of how this works for getting a big growth hormone release. First, you inject a GHRP like ipamorelin. Think of this as the starter's pistol. It tells your pituitary gland to get ready. Then, and this is the critical part, you wait. Just 15 minutes. That little pause allows the pituitary to become super sensitive. Then you inject the GHRH. That's the go signal to a perfectly primed system. The result? A much bigger, more natural, more effective GH pulse. And this same logic applies to something like a healing protocol. Maybe you use BPC 157 in the morning, injected right at the site of an injury for targeted local repair. Then, in the evening, you could use TB 500 systemically to support overall healing while your body rests. You're respecting each peptide's unique job, local versus systemic, and you get the absolute best of both with zero interference. So what's the golden rule here? It's simple. If you're running multiple different compounds, just space your injections by at least 15 to 30 minutes. That's it. That little bit of time is all it takes to let the first compound start its journey, clear out, and begin binding to its receptors before you introduce a new signal into the system. And really, this is what it all comes down to, isn't it? The most powerful, most effective protocol isn't some magic blend of chemicals you find online. It's the knowledge. It's understanding the why behind what you're doing. When you get the principles of the chemistry and the biology, you can make smart decisions that truly optimize your health. So the next time you're thinking about your protocol, just ask yourself this one question. Are you just blindly mixing chemicals because of some bro science you read online? Or are you taking the time to learn the notes, respect the rhythm, and actually conduct your body's symphony? The choice and the results are completely up to you.